you talked about education as an industry. I just think education is not an industry. Education is a public institution that represents our country's interest and local communities' interest in having kids educated, all kids educated, for success in jobs and to being prepared for college and citizenship. That's not an industry, that's a public institution that's vital to our future. On the specific points that you've made, let me just make on 2 different points. One is, you mentioned that there wasn't a call for reducing formula funds, but as I've heard, even Governor Romney recently has said that he won't increase funds, but he won't cut them. Last night, your co-chair said he won't increase funds, won't cut them. Mm-hmm. You said earlier tonight that he wants to have more incentives for competitive grants, and that would have to come then, if you have a flat budget, I think you alluded yourself to, it's got to come from somewhere, which means you alluded to coming from potentially from those formula funds or somewhere else. So that's where my take is, that if you're not increasing funding, but you're increasing economic incentives, that means cuts elsewhere, which I think is not the right approach. On the portability question, here. So I think you mentioned there is again, 2 decent people who care deeply about the future of American education. You said 2 just different views of how to get there. And you mentioned the word dial back, and you want to dial back certain things and not dial back others. I think what you said, and the campaign has said, is you want to dial back the president's focus on supporting, federally, supporting state efforts to raise standards and for the Common Core. That you want to dial back the federal effort that would require state-driven efforts to turn around low-performing schools. And I think those are different. Dial back federal funding on things like Pell, even as you talk about refocusing Pell to those who need it most. I think it's clear that there are some of them who wouldn't benefit from Pell. I think the portability proposal is a proposal which would dial up the federal role, but in a problematic way. So it's, if you were in a community or state that said, hey, we want to try this idea out. Communities and states should try out ideas. And we could have a discussion here about the viability and sort of interesting for community X or statewide to try it. I think that the idea of the federal government mandating that as a condition of receiving Title I funds and IDEA funds, mandating that states have not only portable funding, but that states have state dollars follow kids across district lines, to me is an overreach in terms of a one-size-fits-all policy. And I think that the idea of the $700 or $800 or $900 in Title I funding, supporting those efforts to help kids go to schools, leave kids short when they think the real costs of education are far more than $700, $800, or $900.